Leave your job and take care of your sister's child. She doesn't have the time right now. He said it calmly. So calmly, as if he were just asking someone to pass the salt. The Christmas table was long, set far too lavishly, the way it always is when people try to hide tension behind food. 20 people. Relatives I saw once a year who knew only as much about me as they were allowed to know. My mother nodded without even looking at me. That's what family does, she added softly, leaving no room for argument. My name is Hannah Reeves. I am 41 years old. And for exactly 6 years, I allowed these people to believe I was the ungrateful daughter who ran away to the city and forgot where she came from. They believed I was just pushing papers in an office, living a separate life that had nothing to do with the family. I didn't argue. I didn't make excuses. I didn't try to change their minds. I simply picked up my knife, placed it neatly beside my plate, and let the sound of metal hitting porcelain echo through the room. And only then did I say a single sentence. I wonder how long you were planning to pretend you didn't know who was actually keeping everything afloat. My father was the first to change. His smile vanished instantly, as if wiped away. My mother turned pale, and the table grew so silent that even the old clock in the living room suddenly sounded too loud. To understand why that single sentence destroyed everything, you have to go back. Back to the winter when our family business almost ceased to exist. The folder had been sitting on the passenger seat the entire drive, an ordinary beige folder, the kind sold by the dozens in any office supply store. But inside was the most expensive decision I had ever made, and I was driving it back home. The drive took almost 2 hours. I didn't turn on any music, just the hum of the engine and the occasional passing car. Every few minutes, I looked at the folder, and every time, I turned away. In my coat pocket lay an old metal key, my grandfather's key. It was cold, despite the heat inside the car. Old metal always holds the cold longer than it should. My phone lit up when I was about 40 minutes from town. I put it on speaker. "Everything is ready for tomorrow morning, Hannah," a voice said. "Are you sure?" It was Mark Ellison, my lawyer, a man who doesn't ask unnecessary questions unless the matter is serious. "I'm sure," I replied. "Once you sign, there's no turning back." I knew that. That's exactly why I'm driving there. He paused for a second. "In 30 years of practice, I've seen a lot, but never something like this." "Then you're about to." I hung up. The town appeared around the bend almost unnoticed, the exact same town I remembered. Small, stubborn, insular. Here, generations lived on the same land, ran the same businesses, and passed down power like old furniture. And if you left even once, you were put into a separate category. Almost like a traitor. I left when I was 18, and in their eyes, nothing had changed since then. I pulled up outside my parents' house and killed the engine. The kitchen light was on. Through the window, I could see my mother moving between the stove and the table. My sister Lily was laughing at something, holding a towel in her hand. From the outside, everything looked cozy. It always looked that way from the outside. They thought I had returned empty-handed. I walked in through the side door. The front door was for guests. I had stopped being a guest a long time ago. "Oh, look who decided to remember the way home," my father said, without even getting up. He never got up. People came to him. "Still working with your paperwork?" he added, raising his glass. Someone chuckled softly. "Something like that," I replied. Lily hugged me with one arm. "We didn't think you'd come," she said. "You're always so busy with your spreadsheets." She didn't even finish her sentence, just waving her hand dismissively. "I couldn't miss it," I said. And that was the truth. I placed my bag on the floor and ran my hand along the edge of the kitchen counter. Everything was the same, even the small chip near the sink. "Hannah was always good at the boring stuff," my father said, "addressing everyone. Papers, numbers, nothing more." He took a sip. "Real business is this," he gestured toward Lily. "She understands how to run something real." I smiled, very calmly, and I walked upstairs. My room was no longer mine. It held boxes of decorations and folding chairs. I sat on the edge of the bed and laid the folder on my lap. They thought I was just working with papers. But they didn't know the main thing. I don't fill out reports. I don't keep the books. I am the person they call when a business is already almost dead. When debts are suffocating it. When partners walk away. When there's only one question left. Save it. or bury it. And 6 years ago, I made a choice. Not for myself. That winter, it all started with a single phone call. I was working in New York back then. A high-rise building, glass walls, an office on the 22nd floor. People there don't ask unnecessary questions, only deadlines and numbers. The phone rang at 6:12 a.m. I was already awake. Hannah. My mother's voice sounded different. Not like usual. It lacked her typical confidence. That was the first red flag. What happened? A pause. Too long. We need you to come home. Not we miss you. Not come for the weekend. We need you. What happened? I sat up on the bed, turning on the light. It's about the business. That's when everything clicked into place. Trouble. I knew it was coming. I just didn't think it would be so soon. How bad is it? Another pause. Just come. That meant only one thing. It was already bad. I arrived the same day. My father met me in the office, not at home. That was another signal. He never showed weakness outside the family. But that day, he sat at his desk and didn't even stand up. In front of him lay papers, a lot of papers. Finally, he said, I hope you actually understand something in those numbers of yours. I didn't answer. I just sat down across from him. Show me. He slid the folder toward me, and that's when I saw it. First, the loans. Second, default notices. Third, contracts that were already collapsing. I flipped further, and further, and further. With every page, the picture grew worse. This wasn't a crisis. This was a slow bankruptcy that had already begun. How much time? I asked, without looking up. What? How much time until everything closes? He sighed in frustration. We're not closing. I raised my eyes to meet his. Then give me a number. He looked away, and right then, I knew. He already knew. About 3 months, he said quietly. 3 months. That meant there was almost nothing left to save. Who is handling the finances? I asked. Lily helps out, he answered quickly. I nodded. That explained a lot. So what do you suggest? He asked. I closed the folder. Do you want an honest answer? He smirked. Of course. Shut it down. He stood up abruptly. We didn't spend 30 years building this just to shut it down. Then listen to option 2. He fell silent. I leaned forward. You hand control over to me. Silence. Real silence. The kind where decisions alter lives. No, he said immediately. I wasn't surprised. Then you have 3 months, I replied calmly and stood up. Wait. I stopped by the door. If you step into this, he said, you play by our rules. I turned around slowly. No. I looked straight at him. If I step in, they're my rules. He was silent for a long time. Too long, and that was precisely what meant he had already lost. What do you want? He finally asked. That's when it all started. The conditions were simple. On paper, full control over the finances, the right to renegotiate contracts, and most importantly, the right to make decisions without family approval. They agreed, not because they trusted me, but because they had no choice. Lily said back then, just don't destroy everything completely with your methods. I simply looked at her. It's too late to fear destruction. It's already happened. For the first 2 weeks, I barely slept. I went through every contract, every debt, every transaction over the last 5 years, and I found what I was looking for. Errors, bad decisions, money spent in the wrong places, deals that looked pretty but didn't work. But most importantly, I found the hidden flaw. They were living as if the business were still growing, when in reality, it was falling, and no one wanted to admit it. The first decision was the most painful. I shut down 2 divisions. Completely. People lost their jobs. Contracts were canceled. My father didn't speak to me for 3 days. You are destroying our name, he said. I am saving what's left of it, I replied. He didn't believe me. But numbers don't lie. A month later, losses stopped growing. 2 months later, they started dropping. 3 months later, profit appeared. Small, but real. Yet that was only half the battle. Because the real problem wasn't the numbers, it was trust. Our partners had already written us off. They needed proof that the business was alive. And then I did something no one expected of me. I invested my own money, personal funds. No one knew about it. Not father, not mother, not Lily. I funneled the deal through a third-party company, anonymously. The risk was immense. If everything failed, I would lose everything I had earned in 10 years. But I knew one thing. If this worked, the business would survive. And it worked. Contracts returned, our reputation was restored, money started flowing back in. 6 months later, the company was back on its feet. A year later, it was generating solid profit. And that's when I walked away. without explanations, without recognition, without gratitude. They decided that things had simply worked themselves out, that it happened on its own, that Lily had handled it. I let them think that way for 6 years, and now we're back at this table, and they are telling me, leave your job and take care of the child. I look at them, and for the first time in a long time, I don't stay silent. Do you want the truth? I say. No one answers. But everyone is listening. I place my palm on the table, slowly, clearly. Without me, you wouldn't have had this business for 6 years. Lily laughs. Seriously? I turn my gaze to her. Yes, and for the first time all evening, no one is smiling. The room held its breath. After my words, no one moved. Without you? Lily repeated, a sharp edge in her voice. Do you really think all of this is because of you? I didn't answer right away. I opened my bag, slowly, without rushing, and pulled out that same folder, the one I brought with me. I don't think, I said quietly. I know. I laid the folder on the table. My father frowned. What is this? An answer. I opened it and turned it toward him. The first document. A contract, dated 6 years ago. The company name, not ours. Lily leaned closer. And what are we supposed to see? Read it. She took the sheet, first with irritation, then slower, then in complete silence. This is an investment, she said. So what? Look at the owner. Silence. I watched her eyes stop on the line and linger, far too long. This can't be, she whispered. My father snatched the document away, skimmed it, and for the first time all evening, his hands trembled. Is this you? He asked. I nodded. Through a third-party company, so that none of your partners would realize you were on the brink of collapse. My mother squeezed her napkin. You invested your money? All of it. Everything I had at that time. The silence grew heavier, but that was only the beginning. That's not all, I said. I turned the page. The next document. Closure of 2 divisions, my father read. My decision. We thought it was an emergency measure. No, I said calmly. It was the only thing that saved you. Lily stood up abruptly. Are you saying that all this time? I looked at her. Yes. She shook her head. No, that's not true. I worked. I did everything I could. I know, I said softly. And that was true. She really did try. But it wasn't enough, I added. And that was what broke her. You just sat on the sidelines for 6 years? Lily's voice cracked and stayed silent. Yes. Why? I looked at her, then at my father, then at everyone at the table. Because you didn't want the truth. A pause. You wanted a story where you managed all on your own. No one argued. Because it was the truth. My father sank back into his chair, slowly, looking older than he had an hour ago. Why didn't you say anything? He asked. I held the silence for a moment. Because back then, you wouldn't have listened to me. He closed his eyes, and that was the first time in my life I saw him understand. Truly understand. My mother said quietly, We thought you just left. I did leave. After you saved everything. I didn't add another word. There was no point. Lily was still standing. So all of this, she gestured around the house, the table, the people. All of this is because of you? I looked straight at her. No, a pause. It's because of a decision I made back then. Those are different things. She sat down slowly. And for the first time all evening, she found nothing to say. A few minutes passed in silence. No one ate, no one moved. And then my father asked, Why did you come today? There it was, the main question. I closed the folder, neatly. To put an end to it. He frowned. What do you mean? I looked at him. I won't be saving you anymore. Silence. But a different kind. You have a business, I continued. It's stable. It works. I paused. Now it's entirely yours. My mother turned pale. And what about you? I smiled slightly. Me? I am finally free. And the child, Lily suddenly said softly. I looked at her. That is your life. A pause. And your responsibility. She nodded slowly, without arguing. I stood up from the table. This time, last. No one stopped me. No one asked me to stay. But just as I reached the door, my father said, Hannah. I stopped, but I didn't turn around, thank you. I closed my eyes, just for a second, and that was enough. You're welcome, I replied, and I walked out. Outside it was cold, that crisp winter air that nips at your face and makes you feel alive. I took a deep breath, for the first time in a long time, without weight, without expectations, without the need to prove anything. The house remained behind, but for the first time, it no longer mattered. I sat in the car, placed my hands on the steering wheel, and allowed myself one short thought. Not about the past, not about the family, but about the future, which belongs to no one else, except me. I started the engine and drove away without looking back.